The NHL playoff races are heating up. The Ottawa Senators look playoff bound. The LA Kings are on a hot streak, and the Rangers are struggling to stay alive. We've got all that and more on today's Locked On NHL podcast.
You're Locked On NHL, your daily podcast on the National Hockey League. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Happy Friday, everyone, and welcome to the Locked On NHL podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I want to thank everyone who makes Locked On NHL your first listen every day. Don't forget to subscribe on YouTube or wherever you listen to podcasts so you get new episodes as soon as they drop. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new FanDuel customers can get $200 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. I'm Gil Martin from Locked On Islanders. I'm here every Friday with Rachel Donner of Locked On Flyers. And happy Friday, Rachel.
Happy Friday indeed, man. Like, this is starting to be the point where like the divides are coming into play and teams are trying to separate themselves in these playoff races that have been so tight for the last couple of months. So it's interesting times in the season right now.
It is. And, after the trade deadline, some teams were sellers. They're kind of, I wouldn't say giving up on the season, but they kind of realize they're most likely not going to get there. And I think that's one of the reasons we see for the separation. And another one is just the good teams hopefully do rise to the top.
Yeah, that is for sure. The Ottawa Senators made a big splash at the trade deadline. Of course, they acquired Dylan Cousins, I think was one of their bigger acquisitions, as well as Fabian Zetterlund in the deal with the Sharks that they made. And I think, they think this is their year, that they're going to make the playoffs and take that step forward. Now, are they a contending team beyond a round or two? Remains to be seen, right? But they are separating themselves. And of course, we have Locked On Sens to give us the breakdown of their big win against Boston.
We saw the potential save of the year in the NHL in Ottawa's 6-3 win over the Boston Bruins. Senators stay hot, the best team in the NHL in March, 6-0-1, and Linus Ullmark, in a game that was 2 goals at the end of the second period, made a glove save that will be on every highlight reel for the remainder of the year and maybe even beyond. Dylan Cousins extends his point streak since joining the Senators to 4 games. Drake Batherson gets off a 10-game pointless drought, goalless drought, I should say. He gets 2 goals and an assist in this one. And the Senators all of a sudden have a 5-point cushion over the Columbus Blue Jackets and the New York Rangers in the wild card race.
5-point cushion. That's pretty big for a team that hasn't made the playoffs in as long as Ottawa hasn't made it.
Yeah, it is. And that's the kind of separation that Ottawa is going to need, I think. They've been a little inconsistent, and even recently where they had, a losing streak that was pretty much the same. So I think that, if this is them putting it all together and post-trade deadline with those additional moves, like if this is it for them, they can't go back to that inconsistent kind of play that they had. And I think, they're going to have to continue to win out here more often than not. Obviously, with like Drake Batherson's 2 goals, 1 assist game, that was huge for them. Linus Ullmark facing Boston is always a good time, and, finding success there. And, Brady Tkachuk, I think it was interesting because he was a little banged up and didn't play toward the end of the game. But apparently he's going to be okay. And it's just the hockey player. We're going to, move on from here and just tough it out.
Yeah. And now he's on an 8-game point streak. He had an assist last night. And also, by the way, congratulations to Travis Green, 400 wins now as an NHL coach with the win last night. And, Ottawa, you sort of asked that question, would Ottawa be a contender, once the playoffs actually got underway? Could they go more than a round or two? For a team that hasn't been in the playoffs as long as Ottawa is, you got to just get in first, and then you
Right.
can go from there. Anything you do beyond that is gravy.
Right. And, you have to look at the other teams that they would be competing against that have just years and years of playoff experience here. And there's just another level that a lot of these guys don't have right now. And, they're all competitive hockey players and we get that. But there's something to be said for having the experience at that next level of playoff hockey. Surprise us, Ottawa, please. But at the same time, I don't think it's a bad thing either. I think having any playoff experience for this team would be a good thing. And, where they stand right now with being 4 points behind Tampa, who are in third place in the division there, it would be very tough to catch a team like Tampa again with the pedigree that they have. But it's not impossible here, I would say, because they have again separated themselves from Columbus, as far as who's in the first wild card spot. So even like third place or first wild card, I think are both good positions to be in for Ottawa.
Yeah, I would have to agree. And let's face it, whether they finish in third place or a wild card, they're not going to have an easy first round opponent. I mean, third place would get you whoever comes in second, either Toronto or Florida. And the wild card might get you the same thing. It could get you Washington, or it could get you whoever comes in first place. So, not an easy playoff road. But you know what? Here's the thing: the Senators do have a goalie with playoff experience who is
Yep.
capable of getting hot at the right time and maybe helping them pull off an upset. And how big would it be for the Senators organization to win a playoff round?
Yeah, I mean, if the playoffs started today, their opponent would be the Washington Capitals, so
Yeah.
that would be a tall order. But also, like with the Capitals, I think obviously they've been dominant this season. But is this particular Capitals team one that can translate that into the playoffs? Or is this a President's Trophy kind of team? Like you just don't know until you get there. And especially, and we're gonna talk about the Caps later in the show, of course, but especially once Alex Ovechkin breaks that record, is there gonna be a deflation for the Caps? And so I think that it would be an interesting matchup, I will say that.
It would be. And I wonder, is it almost better for the Caps that he doesn't break it this year and that he
I
stays
don't know.
hungry? I mean,
Yeah, I think, there's more to talk about later in the show on that, but,
yeah.
as far as the Senators go, and this game also had implications for the Bruins because the Bruins are now 2 points behind the Blue Jackets for that second wild card spot. Now, the Bruins were big sellers at the deadline, so I don't think there's any playoff expectation there. But again, like a team that has had large amounts of success over the last, 5 to 10 years in the downward turn, there's going to be some guys on that team, especially after trading their captain away, that are going to play with some bitterness and some edge and are going to want to make a run for it, even if it isn't expected of them. And so, the game had an impact on them as well.
It did. And the problem that the Bruins face right now is that they've played two more games than Columbus. So they're 2 points back, but they also have to pass four teams to get in. And
Right.
everybody has played fewer games than Boston. So not impossible for the Bruins, but after trading, being sellers at the deadline, having the games in hand, and having that many teams to jump, it's a tall order, I think, for the Boston Bruins. And with so many teams bunched together, you win two or three in a row, and you jump up the standings, and you lose two or three in a row, and you can go from wild card to having to jump three teams just like at the snap of your fingers.
Yeah, I think so. And that's what's made this Eastern Conference playoff race so interesting all season long with all these teams bunched together. Like there are opportunities there, but obviously, as there are fewer and fewer games left in the season, it's going to be harder and harder to make up those gaps.
Harder to make up those gaps and less and less margin for error. There's fewer games left to overcome a 2 or 3 game losing streak where, in January, you could say, oh, we've got plenty of games left. And now not so much. We're getting into the teens and it's getting tougher. And those 3-point games always make it harder to make up ground when you're behind. Yeah, you're only 4 points out, but it's not easy to make up the 4 points. We have got a lot more to get to on today's show. The LA Kings starting to put things together out west. The Rangers continue to struggle, and a big signing of an extension by a star goalie. We've got all that and more coming up on today's Locked On NHL podcast.
If you're like me, your mornings have to start with a good cup of coffee. I got tired of settling for those basic grocery store pods and it just wasn't cutting it. That's why I turned to Trade. And let me tell you, this coffee is next level. Trade is the #1 specialty coffee marketplace in the US, bringing you fresh coffee from over 50 of the country's top roasters. Their experts have taste tested thousands of coffees, curating over 450 amazing roasts. Whether you're new to coffee or know exactly what you like, they'll handpick the perfect match for you. I found a local Philadelphia roaster in Reanimator that I had always wanted to try. My first bag was a game changer. It had such a smooth flavor, and I could actually taste the difference from my usual coffee. And their subscription makes it so easy. There's no more last-minute grocery store runs or settling for whatever is on the shelf. And right now, Trade is exclusively offering our listeners 40% off your order at drinktrade.com/lockedonnhl. That's drinktrade.com/lockedonnhl for 40% off your first order at drinktrade.com/lockedonnhl.
Today's episode is also brought to you by FanDuel. March Madness is here, and FanDuel is giving you the chance to get in on the action like never before. Right now, new customers can get $200 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. That's 200 extra bucks to use on everything from buzzer beaters to Cinderella stories and even who's cutting down the nets. I've got my eye on a few underdogs this year. Underdogs are always fun, and FanDuel makes it easy to back them with spreads, totals, and game props. With tournament games happening almost every day, there's always something exciting to bet on, and the FanDuel app is so easy to use, and when I win, I get paid instantly, no waiting around. So visit FanDuel.com and get in on the college hoops action all tournament long. That's FanDuel.com, FanDuel.com. Check it out today. How about the LA Kings? A team that has had their ups and downs all year.
Yes.
But one thing about the LA Kings, they are very, very tough to beat at home, and they have a lot of home games coming down the stretch.
Yeah, that is a big factor here. And of course, they shut out the Washington Capitals last night 3-0 in a very crucial game for them.
Yeah, they needed it. And you look at the standings out west, and right now, LA is 1 point ahead of Edmonton in the race for second place in the Pacific Division. And LA has a game in hand. We talked about how good they are on home ice, 22-3-4 on home ice, 13-17-5 away. If it's going to be another LA Edmonton first round matchup, getting that 7th game at home would be huge for the Kings.
Absolutely. And yeah, that is the matchup as it currently stands here, heading into a potential playoff matchup here. And the Oilers, as we know, have been also a little inconsistent. But you're correct, having that home ice advantage would be a huge deal here. And we have our Locked On LA Kings host here talking about that shutout of the Washington Capitals.
A statement game for the LA Kings. Hi, I'm Eddie Garcia, host of Locked On LA Kings. It was the NHL's best road team, the Washington Capitals, against the NHL's best home team, the LA Kings. In the end, The home team posts a solid 3-0 win with goalie Darcy Kuemper making 21 saves in net for the shutout. Kings held a 1-0 lead going into the third thanks to Warren Fogel's 19th goal of the season, but the Kings would break it open in the opening 2 minutes of the third. Kevin Fiala scores his 25th goal of the year, and then moments later would set up Quinton Byfield for his 16th goal of the season. Byfield now has a goal in 5 consecutive games as well. I mentioned Darcy Kuemper, traded by the Washington Capitals to the LA Kings in the offseason. This was his first game against his old team. The man he was traded for, Pierre-Luc Dubois, was booed throughout the game by the LA fans. He would finish a -1. Also a big win for the Kings in the big picture as they move past Edmonton and into second place in the Pacific Division in the battle for home ice advantage in a possible first-round playoff matchup.
Big win for the LA Kings. They needed it. And look, it's got to feel good for Kuemper to shut out his
Oh, man.
I mean, that's just like vindication.
Right. And I love those kinds of performances. Right. And I also love when the fans get into it and boo their former player who, sometimes when guys ask for a trade out of town or there was some, residual resentment there, and the fans get involved in that, it sometimes makes the games a little bit more fun. But yeah, what a performance by Darcy Kuemper in that game. And one of the other aspects of that game that he didn't get into in depth was that the Washington Capitals had 5 power plays and scored on 0 of them. And that is something that the LA Kings can take forward in the rest of their season and trying to maintain or increase their standing heading toward the playoffs, because having a solid penalty kill is going to be extremely important in those circumstances.
It absolutely is. And, special teams becomes even more important in the playoffs where the games are tighter checking and there's less time and space and it's a faster game.
I mean, there's fewer calls, but when they happen, it's a big deal.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And it's ironic too, because with all the talent that the Washington Capitals have, and they scored more goals than any other team in the NHL this season so far, they're only 15th in the league on the power play. And, that may be something that could hurt them come playoff time.
Yeah, I mean, it absolutely could. I think it is a big deal. But I do think that the Kings are a team, given their inconsistencies, that have to stay on it in order to get anywhere in the playoffs this time. They have to peak at the right time and stay consistent. A loss here or there to end out the season is going to be fine, but they have to maintain this level of play as they move forward.
I agree. And look, the Kings are a team that wins primarily with goaltending and defense. They're third in the league in goals against. They are only average offensively. So it's like timely offense and really, really solid shutdown kind of a defense. Kuemper is going to be a big key for them for the rest of the way and into the playoffs.
Yeah, I think so. And, we talk a little bit about the Oilers already, but with the high powered offense that the Oilers have, like the Kings defense is going to become even more important if this is in fact the matchup we're going to see.
Let me ask you this. Having the Kings and the Oilers potentially meet for what, the 4th year in a row in the first round of the playoffs, is that good or bad for hockey and for fans of those teams?
I mean, it's probably bad for fans of those teams from an emotional standpoint, but I think for the rest of us, it's great because I think there's a certain level, again, of the competitiveness. There's still potential bad blood from past years that carries over, especially, again, these are 2 teams that do have the playoff experience to take it up a notch. Obviously, as we know, the Oilers made it to the Stanley Cup final this year. For the Kings, that would be a feather in their cap to take down the defending conference champions in the first round. So I think, is it now? You can have the bigger picture conversation. Is it good for hockey for Connor McDavid to get bounced in the first round? Probably not. but that does not matter for the LA Kings, right?
No, no. Getting past the first round matters for the LA Kings, whether they play the Edmonton Oilers or any other team in the playoffs, but it's always going to seemingly be the Edmonton Oilers. All right, we have got more to get to on today's show. The New York Rangers hanging in the playoff race, but are they good enough to finish and get in? We're going to talk about that, plus an extension for a star goalie, coming up next on today's Locked On NHL podcast.
Ever check your bank account and wonder, where did all my money go? Between dining out, online shopping, and entertainment, it's sometimes easy to lose track. And that's where Monarch Money comes in. They're your personal CFO. They give you full visibility and control over your finances. Monarch Money isn't just a budgeting app, it's a complete financial command center. So you can track all your accounts, your investments, and your spending all in one place. So you stop just managing your money and start building wealth. Instead of juggling multiple apps, you can use Monarch to check your finances, track spending, and even plan those long-term goals. And you'll find things you never knew about your spending habits. So take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use the code LOCKEDONNHL at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. That's monarchmoney.com, code LOCKEDONNHL for half off that first year.
The New York Rangers staying alive in the tight Eastern Conference playoff race, and they did it in dramatic fashion last night.
They did, and we have John Chick from Locked On New York Rangers to talk about it.
Down the Minnesota Wild 3-2 for a badly needed win, a badly needed 2 points, and awesome to see Schneider come through in the clutch there. But I think one of the biggest things that happened in this game was a very small adjustment made to the lineup by Peter Laviolette before the game started. It's funny because before the game, I tweeted out that I'm kind of going numb to the different line combinations because they change so frequently, and I don't know, it's just been such a lackluster season for the Rangers. But a very small adjustment by Peter Laviolette. He flip-flops Will Cooley and Alexis Lafreniere in the lineup. This is one of the best games that Will Cooley has played in a long time. I thought he looked absolutely fantastic out there, assisted on the Vincent Trocheck goal, played a very physical brand of hockey, and really everybody in the top six, I think, benefited from that change. A very small change. Again, it's just the flip-flop of two players, but it was absolutely huge. Going to be talking about all that, and also going to be talking about the worst call that I have ever seen made by a referee in the history of professional sports. It went against Matt Rempe. Anybody who watched this game knows what I'm talking about. But yeah, just an absolute thrilling win. They are now tied with Columbus for the final playoff spot. Columbus has a game in hand, but still in it, man, in spite of all the drama and all this turmoil that we've seen this season. Rangers very much alive down the stretch here, and going to be very interesting one way or the other. Break it down on the next episode of Locked On New York Rangers. Do not miss it.
I don't know. Worst call in the history.
Yeah.
There's a lot of competition for that.
I know. There's a lot of hyperbole here on today's show with like Ullmark's save and that right there. But I mean, when your team is borderline like that, you're looking for every little margin of error you can, right?
Exactly. And very big for the Rangers to get this win. It is so tight right now in that wild card. As John mentioned, the Rangers tied with the Columbus Blue Jackets with 70 points, but the Blue Jackets have a game in hand. The Canadiens are just 1 point back. The Red Wings just 2 points back, as are the Bruins. It is a really tight race. And the thing about the Rangers, this is a team that on paper should be better than their record. And they have just had trouble finding themselves this year. And there's been a lot of turnover as a result on this roster.
Right. And you look at the losing streak they had prior to this win. 2 of those losses were to those very same Ottawa Senators and Columbus Blue Jackets, who are their direct competition for this playoff spot. And to me, that's what speaks volumes here, right?
You got to beat the teams that you're fighting for those spots. And those are 4-point swing games if they happen in regulation. And that is very often the difference between making the playoffs and playing golf and watching the playoffs on TV. So, can the Rangers overcome all the internal turmoil that they've gone through this season and get back into the playoffs? That would be a really good story, but it's not as good as the Blue Jackets would be if
I
they made
know.
the playoffs. I don't mean to disparage Ranger fans, but the Blue Jackets would be just an amazing story after everything they've been through.
Yeah, now on the Blue Jacket side of things, they got shut out by Vegas last night, so that did not help their cause. And I think the Rangers kind of lucked out a little bit relative to that. Now, Aiden Hill, as we know, just signed a huge contract extension and celebrated by shutting out Columbus. So I think that there's something to be said for that element of that game. But you look at a team like Columbus going up against more of a juggernaut like Vegas, and they can't win there. That makes you look at the Rangers and say, well, the talent is there to compete. So they should be able to take it up a notch in a way that maybe Columbus can't.
Right, but will they? Because it's
Mm.
been an internal chemistry thing, I think, more than anything for this Rangers team. You wonder, do they like the coach? Do they like the general manager? Do they like each other? And it's sort of been an issue for this team all year to find chemistry and to get everybody playing to their potential. So if they can do that down the stretch, the playoffs are there for the taking. But if not, they have nobody to blame but themselves, really.
Yeah, and they're lucky that that game was against Minnesota, where it doesn't matter what points Minnesota get out
Right.
of that game as far as their playoff race goes. To your point, if it's against one of these other teams like they've just lost against recently, like that's not going to cut it for the Rangers.
No, it's not. And you don't have most teams don't have a lot of games against the other conference left on their schedule. So having an overtime win or a shootout win against a team from the other conference, it changes the whole dynamic of overtime and the way you approach it because you don't care if the other team gets a point or not. What did you think
Yeah.
about Hill with a 6-year, $6.25 million AAV?
I think that's great for the team and it's great for him. It's well deserved. And I think that, it was kind of a foregone conclusion that he was going to resign there. It was just going to be a matter of the term and the AAV. And I think that, it's not an 8-year deal. So that's team friendly, but I think it's a pretty solid salary for him.
Yeah, and at 28, this is his big contract. This is,
Yep.
the next one he'll be probably on a 2-year deal, and it'll be a little less money, even relative to inflation and all of that with the cap. But this is his big contract for his career. And congratulations to Aiden Hill. And what better way to celebrate than to get that shutout win and 2 big points for Vegas. And is Vegas going to be a contender for the Cup this year? I mean, it seems like every year they're in that conversation.
I don't know. It should be interesting. I think they will compete, of course, but I don't know where they fall. Like I can see them actually like running the table, or I can see them crashing and burning. It's just like I feel like there's no middle ground with this team.
Yeah, I mean, they have a 6-point cushion right now over LA in the Pacific Division. They would be the number 2 seed, as far as, Winnipeg right now, pretty much
Right.
running away with the number 1 seed in the West. But
Yeah,
Vegas is
so they
one of
would
those
face
teams.
the Wild if the playoffs started today, which I think
Yeah,
is a winnable series for them.
probably, but not easy. The Wild, they're unpredictable. They can play with anybody on some nights, and on some nights they can't seem to find their way. So it'll be interesting to see how that series plays out. But that is going to do it for us today. Don't forget, check out the Women's Hockey Spotlight with Rachel and Erica L. Ayala tomorrow. And we are here every day, Monday through Saturday, bringing you the biggest stories from the hockey world. I'll be back on Monday interviewing 3 of our local hosts about the biggest stories from around the NHL. Have a great weekend, everybody, and thanks for listening to and watching the Locked On NHL podcast.